Okay, let's just dive right into this explainer. Today, we're unpacking a dense, chaotic, and honestly, highly satirical sketch that has been making some serious waves online. We're going to look at a fictional, but man, strikingly familiar confrontation between a really passionate online educator and a wildly sensationalist TV news anchor. So what actually happens when the structured world of education collides head-on with the high-octane theater of broadcast news? Well, through some incredibly sharp comedy, the sketch asks some absolutely crucial questions about our society, media integrity, and, our national priorities.
To make sense of all this, we're breaking it down into 5 quick parts. First, a sensational media confrontation. Second, healthcare and absurd logic. Third, integrity versus selling out. Fourth, the Pakistan comparison benchmark. And finally, highlighting the real issues.
All right, so let's kick things off with Part 1, a sensational media confrontation. Right from the jump, the sketch hooks us with this explosive, inciting incident. The TV anchor rolls up to a police station to confront the educator, who, by the way, she completely dismisses as just some two-penny online teacher. She immediately accuses him of attempt to murder and violating the Arms Act. And why? Well, because his guards supposedly fired weapons outside his coaching institute. The anchor arrives with cameras already rolling, literally ready to frame this as an act of unhinged violence by a guy who's, trusted to teach students. Now you can see the dynamic right away. The anchor is framing the whole event as malicious and completely unprovoked. But the teacher, he defends his actions. He explains that this unruly, totally faceless mob was creating absolute chaos outside his institute. He did fire in the air, which actually he freely admits was a mistake that landed him in jail, but he argues it was literally a survival instinct, just a desperate move to disperse a crowd that just couldn't be reasoned with. This is our very first glimpse into how the sketch portrays the media, completely stripping away context just to create a flashy, sensational headline.
Moving right along to Section 2, Healthcare and Absurd Logic.
So looking for more ammo to attack the educator's character, the anchor sends a reporter to expose a charitable hospital the teacher runs for the poor. And what is this massive, grand exposé? The reporter aggressively corners a patient just to reveal that an ultrasound at this hospital costs 250 rupees. Let's put that into perspective for a second. That is fundamentally low. It's a tiny fraction of standard medical rates. But the on-the-ground reporter theatrically tries to spin this as daylight robbery, calling the teacher a thief simply because the patient admits that even this incredibly nominal fee is tough to scrape together.
Now here is where the satire employs some brilliantly dark logic. When the teacher points out, rightfully so, that his hospital is doing immense good for the country, the anchor counters with an argument that is just completely unhinged. She literally accuses him of destroying the country. Her logic? By providing cheap healthcare, the poor are surviving. And if the poor survive, she argues, it ruins the nation's population control efforts. I mean, wow. It's this shocking, hilarious extreme that leaves the teacher completely speechless. The creator is using this wild, twisted logic to satirize how media narratives can sometimes contort an undeniable good into a controversial negative, literally just for the sake of winning an argument.
Okay, that brings us to Section 3, Integrity versus Selling Out.
Still desperately searching for a weak spot, the anchor attempts to corner the teacher with rumors. She gets all smug and asks about a rumor that he rejected a massive 107 crore buyout offer to leave his institute. The teacher, super calm, corrects the record. He says, actually, the rejected offer was 17 crore. But here's the kicker. Rather than boasting about his loyalty or patting himself on the back, he uses this correction to set a brilliant little trap. He delivers this absolutely biting critique of the press, saying, I would not have rejected the offer if I knew earlier that humans could sell their integrity for a price. Ouch, right? It's a really sharp, comedic jab that basically implies the news anchor's very presence is a masterclass in compromising your values for a quick buck. He's essentially telling her, hey, I didn't even know integrity had a price tag until I saw how you operate.
And you know what? The sketch pushes this mockery to its absolute limit. When the teacher suggests that the media would probably even promote the benefits of a terrible disease if they got paid for it, the anchor doesn't even try to defend her integrity. Instead, she leans entirely into the bit. She actually breaks into this mock super enthusiastic newsread detailing how chemotherapy saves money on shampoo and conditioner, literally asking who wouldn't want those savings in this economy. It is deeply cynical humor, for sure, but it perfectly visualizes the creator's critique. We're looking at a media landscape so driven by sensationalism and profit that it's just completely detached from human empathy.
Which leads us perfectly into Section 4, the Pakistan comparison benchmark.
So the teacher starts trying to raise genuine systemic issues, right? Things like rising inflation, unemployment, failing education systems. But every single time he brings these up, the anchor just automatically deflects by shouting, well, it's worse in Pakistan. This is heavily satirizing a very real, very common media trope. And you can see the teacher getting visibly frustrated. He argues that constantly comparing the country to a struggling neighbor is just a fundamentally flawed way to measure success. He insists that if we absolutely have to make comparisons, we should be looking at developed, highly efficient nations like Germany or Japan.
And he encapsulates this whole flaw with one incredibly hard-hitting line. Comparing yourself to a beggar to feel like a king is not a smart thing to do. Hit the nail right on the head, didn't he? This brilliantly illustrates the creator's belief that using a struggling nation as our primary benchmark just fosters complete complacency. It literally prevents true national progress by setting the bar for success way, way too low.
All right, finally, let's look at Section 5, highlighting the real issues.
At this point, the teacher is entirely fed up with the anchor's deflections and the constant name-calling. So he reminds her that their specific brand of sensational journalism comes at a really steep international cost. He explicitly calls out the deepening decline of the region's press freedom index, basically telling her that the media is just continuously digging its own grave when it comes to any sort of global credibility.
Instead of engaging in these theatrical debates, the teacher starts listing out severe, actual life-or-death crises that the media just routinely ignores. We're talking systemic exam paper leaks that are literally devastating students' lives, the tragic ongoing unrest in Manipur, and widespread food adulteration that is quietly killing the poor. He looks right at the anchor and challenges her, basically asking, why aren't these issues deemed worthy of your primetime discussions?
As we near the end of the explainer, the sketch resolves by drawing a really clear line between the fundamental duties of these two pillars of society. The teacher makes it clear that even if his institute is entirely shut down, his duty as an educator remains. He'll just grab a chalkboard and teach kids out in the streets if he has to. On the flip side, he reminds the anchor of what the media's duty actually is, to question the nation's flaws. He makes this really powerful argument that true patriotism doesn't just mean blindly praising your country and hiding behind a patriot tag. No, true patriotism is loving your country enough to highlight its flaws so that they can actually be fixed.
And that really brings us to the core takeaway of this entire explainer. The creator is using this highly satirical clash to basically hold a mirror right up to the audience. So, I'm going to leave you with this crucial question to reflect on. Are we, as consumers of information, demanding real accountability for the issues that actually shape and affect human lives? Or are we just comfortably consuming the media's theatrical distractions? Thank you so much for diving into this explainer with me today, and hey, keep asking the right questions.